All right, third hour of the Elias Makos Show. We start off with this. Last week, Zoom. You know the company, we all had to use their products about 3 years ago, and everyone was forced to talk to all of their colleagues and have meetings over Zoom or competing services. So Zoom last week, they announced the jig is up. They told their employees to get back into the office, at least partially. But I saw this story. I said, well, that's interesting, right? Of all companies that should have stuck it out to the very end with 100% work from home, it should be Zoom. I mean, they're the ones who are telling companies that they can get their work done over Zoom. So I want to talk a little bit more about this. I want to talk if remote work is dead or not. Ajay Pangarkar joins us, CEO and partner over at centralknowledge.com. Ajay, welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be back, Elias. It's been a while.
I should note that you're not joining us over Zoom. You're joining us over a phone line. I think that says a lot here. So, Ajay, isn't this an admission? Zoom of all companies, Zoom telling its employees to get back to the office. Isn't it an admission that Zoom sucks for work meetings and productivity?
Well, I think there's a little layered onion here that we have to start peeling back the different layers of this onion. Well, first, to your point, if I were Zoom and at a strategic level, I'd probably double down and actually prove the fact that my tool actually works very well for remote workers and have my employees remote work. And so this whole forcing their workers back to the office, and mind you, let's qualify it here. Right now, it's only about a couple of days a week, but still, there's a couple of reasons for why they're doing that. And one is, probably the underlying message is for creativity and innovation. That's probably the commercial that they're sending out to their employees, that we need you back into the office because, it's better to be creative and innovative when we're all in person working together and brainstorming than over, a virtual environment. And I think that's the underlying message that they're trying to deliver, but I don't think that's the real reason.
So there was a post out with this news item. Zoom tells their employees to return to office for work. And do you know the discount airline Ryanair in Europe? Ryanair, you've heard of them.
Yep.
They retweeted this news article and they added their own take. And this is what they tweeted this out because they like to joke on their Twitter. Ryanair tells staff to travel by train. And to you know what I mean? And so this is what this says to me, right? Yeah. Even if it's hybrid, it's saying you don't believe in your product.
And to the point again, they should have doubled down and said, hey, we can remote work. But, let's peel this back because a lot of these companies are, especially the technology companies, are forcing their employees to come back to work, which, again, when you think about it, Elias, for a second, these are technology companies that are promoting technologies that allow us accessibility anywhere at any time. So why are these companies, Amazon and Zoom and all these companies, forcing us to go back to the office if we have all these wonderful technology tools that allow us to be productive anywhere? And the question is this, and I don't think, what we don't get into the layers of the discussion here is a couple of things. One, they're bringing people back into work, one, because possibly there's poor management. And I'm not talking Zoom particularly, I'm talking just in general. The generations of people like myself who've been through business school, who are told to manage a certain way, and usually in person, are not trained or educated enough to be able to pivot after 2 or 3 years of remote working to manage people in a virtual environment. And I think that's got to change over time. And you've heard me mention this before, Elias. Mm-hmm. It's going to take a generation or so, and that's about 15 years for this to really, for the system. But that's the one thing. And the other one is a financial requirement. And I know we've had the discussion before, but it's the infrastructure of costs that they have to monetize. And I'm going to speak as an accountant, if you don't mind, for just a second, because I'm a CPA. When you have assets that are like buildings and real estate and all this kind of stuff, think of Apple with their $2 billion, ring of fire over there in California that they just built before the pandemic. And accounting-wise and tax-wise, if you don't have people in it working, you can't monetize that, meaning you can't expense it. Mm-hmm. So you have this white elephant sitting there with no people in it, and your shareholders are going, excuse me, we have to do something with this. So part of the reason is the financial requirement is the stakeholders are saying, you got to get back in the office so we can make this thing profitable. And so there's a lot of, layers to the onions of this that doesn't really get discussed in these articles that come out.
And here's the other thing, Ajay. So 3 years ago in the bad times, right? We all remember the bad times of 2020. So when all that stuff went down and we all went home, right?
Yeah.
We already knew our colleagues. We already had that personal touch with all of our colleagues. So even though we were at home, we understood how other people work, how other people talk. We understood everyone's vibe. Now we are 3 years later where, turnover, right, in workplaces. And I think there was a honeymoon period where Zoom could work when everyone knew each other already from the before times. And now with new employees and people that you don't know, it just doesn't work. Is that part of the reason why maybe the jig is up? Because as turnover happens, you can never build a culture if nobody has ever even met anyone?
Yes and no. I mean, let's step back just for a second. Prior to the bad times we've had the last 3 years, the good thing out of it, to say, is that, it's made us realize that we've been shackled to an outdated work environment, a work structure. And there's good and bad with that, and there's always going to be good and bad with everything. But we realized that the Industrial Revolution work ethic that we had doesn't fit into this new world. And to your point, there's been a lot of turnover, employee demand. We don't know the faces. We don't know the people anymore. And part of the reasoning having people come into the office is that socialization aspect. But again, it goes back to the point where if we're able to train managers properly to do this virtually, interactively, and I don't have the solution for it, and if I did, I probably wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be on the beach right now. I had the solution for it. But the point being that if we had the way of being able to manage this properly virtually, we probably can make that still happen on a virtual environment. Mind you, I still agree that there needs to be some face-to-face interaction for the innovation and creativity aspect. Human beings are meant to be in person. We can't you do this creativity brainstorming thing on a computer screen. And I know my colleague that you just spoke to, McJoel, may disagree sometimes, and I love Mitch, by the way. But the point being is that you need some of that interaction to come into play a little bit.
So let me ask you one other thing. What about fairness? You brought up Apple before. So you're a big company, you're Apple, and you have a massive retail workforce in all of your stores around the world. They have to go in 5 days a week. Every company has these employees, and they don't have a choice. It's those so-called frontline workers in retail and who are out there who maybe have to work on the road. They don't have a choice. And and so I'm going in every day, right? But I know some people would not do the same thing that I'm doing. But isn't there also just the matter of fairness? Because now you're splitting up workforces into the haves and the have-nots, ones that have to go in and the other ones that get to sip their lattes at home at their home office. And I don't know if that's, and I don't know what's right here, but I think there is a feeling that it's not fair to have that disparity.
Well, yeah, and that's a fair point, Elias, because what we forget, the ones who get to be remote workers, quote unquote, are the ones who are a little privileged about that because we get that. Possibly. I mean, I've been remote working for 30 years of my life, but the point being is that, there is that disparity or perception of disparity. But, and you said it probably in previous discussions we had, there's been studies showing that the productivity in a remote workforce has been equal and sometimes even more than being actually face-to-face in the office. And so there's got to be a balance, and there's got to be a more clear communication about it. But there is that perception of unfairness. But we can't forget that the ones who are remote working have a bit of a privilege.
And by the way, I get that there's things that are so much better when you don't have to deal with traffic all day. I have a note here from a listener, Ajay. Hi, Elias. I really feel the fundamental difference for many workers are those with kids and those without. The stress level is much less when you're not fighting traffic for drop off and pick up with little kids. And you know what? I get that. And even if you don't have kids, right? The 45 minutes versus wake up and go to your desk. It's hard to argue with that too at the same time.
Well, a couple of things. One is that the traffic thing always bothered me because I can't believe that you spend an hour or 2 hours in traffic each day, and that's unproductive time, and you're already stressed out when you get to work. Plus, if you had a family. And then the second thing is that my traffic is up the stairs between all these cats. So, I have that congestion in the morning, but that's my problem.
Ajay, always great chatting. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
It was great chatting with Elias. Take care.
Ajay Pangarkar is the CEO and partner at centralknowledge.com.